What happens when a desolate Baltimore neighborhood is rocked by a mysterious death? On a chilly winter night in Baltimore, a family celebration turned into the beginning of a twisted tale of deception, betrayal, and murder. What initially appeared to be a tragic case of a Good Samaritan falling victim to urban violence would eventually unravel into one of the most shocking true crime stories in recent Baltimore history. The evening of November 30th, 2018 began innocently enough. Keith Smith, his wife Jacquelyn, and his daughter Valeria were out celebrating Valeria's 28th birthday at the American Legion Hall in Baltimore's Madison Park neighborhood. They ate, drank, danced, and took photos, capturing moments of apparent family harmony that would later haunt investigators. It was just another night out, a friend of Jacquelyn's would later recall. Nobody could have known it would be her last. Born as Jacquelyn Trevane in Providence, Rhode Island, on July 4th, 1964, Jacquelyn Smith was described by her mother as a bright and joyful child who grew into a deeply caring adult. Her early years were marked by a burgeoning love for music and poetry. By the age of 54, Jacquelyn had successfully raised two sons, one in college and the other a graduate who had enlisted in the U.S. Coast Guard. Professionally, she excelled as an electrical engineer, dedicating her skills to the Department of Defense in Maryland. Jacquelyn Smith was 54 years old, a successful engineer at Aberdeen Proving Ground, respected by colleagues and loved by friends. In 2014, she married Keith Smith, and the couple became actively involved in their church. Known for her unwavering faith, Jacquelyn was also recognized for her kindness and generosity. She had been married to Keith Smith for 5 years, becoming stepmother to his daughter Valeria in the process. But at 12:30 a.m., on December 1st, 2018, Jacquelyn's 52-year-old husband Keith Smith placed a frantic 911 call from his vehicle. His wife Jacquelyn had been the victim of a stabbing. Just how did this horrific event happen? According to Keith and Valeria's initial story, they left the American Legion Hall shortly before midnight. As they drove through East Baltimore with Valeria providing directions, they encountered a woman on the street near Valley Street holding what appeared to be a baby and displaying a sign reading, "Please help me feed my baby."
She waved her over to come on over to the car, and then out of nowhere, some guy came over while walking with her. And I hit my window, and Jacquelyn went to hand the money out, and the guy just leaned over and said, "Can I thank your wife?" And so you can thank my wife. And within that split second, this guy commenced to stabbing my wife. Blood was everywhere.
Keith claimed that Jacquelyn, moved by compassion, asked him to stop the car so she could offer the woman some money. He said she rolled down her window and handed the woman a $10 bill. It was at this moment, Keith told police, that a man approached the vehicle, struggled with Jacquelyn over her wallet, stabbed her repeatedly, and then fled with the woman panhandler. The last thing I thought was that they were going to take my wife's life, and so now I got to live with that. I got to live with that every day, Keith said tearfully in front of cameras in the days following the murder. The story immediately captured national headlines. It played into deep-seated fears about urban violence and created a wave of anxiety about helping strangers. Even Oprah Winfrey weighed in on December 4th, tweeting that she would think twice before giving to panhandlers. Baltimore officials urged citizens to be cautious, reinforcing the narrative that random violence had claimed another innocent life.
Using this ruse as panhandlers to get the attention of their would-be victim. And we also want to caution the public about engaging with panhandlers. And recognizing the fact that not all of them have honest intent, not all of them are in real need.
On December 6th, Smith's church community held a vigil for her, with church leaders calling for the supposed killers to turn themselves in. At Jacquelyn's funeral in Rhode Island on December 15th, Keith Smith continued his performance, making an emotional plea to the alleged killers, stating, "So, for the cowards that took my wife's life, I hope it was worth it, because you're going to answer for it one day. You're going to answer to it." From the beginning, something about the case didn't sit right with investigators. Despite thorough searches of the Valley Street area, police found no crime scene evidence. There were no witnesses to corroborate the story, despite the attack supposedly occurring on a city street. Even more suspicious was the fact that the location described was an unusual area for panhandling activity. When police examined the vehicle, they found no unidentified fingerprints or DNA that would suggest strangers had reached into the car. That lack of physical evidence began to raise serious questions about the account provided by Keith and Valeria Smith. Family members of Jacquelyn were also skeptical from the start. One relative later said, "I was always suspicious. My first question was, who would roll the windows down on their wife? Why wouldn't you stomp on the gas to get away, and why didn't you immediately take her to the hospital?" Jacquelyn's mother, Anna Trisvain, had her doubts from the moment Keith called to tell her about her daughter's death. "My daughter was the type of person who was cautious. If somebody came to her window at 2 o'clock in the morning in the rain, begging for money, she would tell them, 'No, go get a job. I'm not giving them nothing,'" she stated.
I knew it was phony. I didn't believe her husband at all.
As investigators dug deeper, troubling new information began to emerge. Cell phone data would later prove crucial to breaking the case open. Records from Valeria's phone placed the Smiths in Druid Hill Park near the Baltimore City Zoo at the time of the murder, not on Valley Street, as they had claimed. This was the first concrete evidence that Keith and Valeria had been lying about what happened that night. But perhaps most damning was what investigators discovered about Keith Smith's activities in the days before and after the murder. He had allegedly approached his brother, Vic Smith, asking him to help get rid of Jacquelyn. According to arrest warrants, Vic Smith told police that his brother had mentioned Jacquelyn was talking about divorcing him. Vic Smith was so disturbed by this request that he reached out to a close friend of Keith's, telling them that Keith had asked him to, quote, "get rid of Jacquelyn," unquote, which he interpreted to mean kill or murder her. In the weeks following Jacquelyn's death, Keith's behavior raised even more red flags. Jacquelyn's family reported that he quickly sold all of her belongings from her townhouse and abruptly announced he was moving to Florida. Her brother would later say, "I always thought that was a decoy move to distract police as he ran for the border." On March 3rd, 2019, 3 months after Jacquelyn Smith's murder, Baltimore police held a press conference announcing a significant development in the case. What they revealed stunned the city and the nation. Keith and Valeria Smith had fabricated the entire panhandler story. According to police, it was Keith Smith who had murdered his wife, with Valeria as an accomplice. In a twist worthy of a Hollywood thriller, Texas police arrested both Keith and Valeria Smith just 20 miles from the U.S.-Mexico border as they were attempting to flee the country. The father and daughter who had once tearfully pleaded for justice were now in handcuffs, charged with first-degree murder. Baltimore Police Commissioner Michael Harrison was quoted saying, "The information and the evidence point to, it was not a panhandler. The circumstances were very different, and people took advantage of Baltimore." Baltimore Mayor Catherine Pugh called the killing a double tragedy, accusing the family of murdering Mrs. Smith with unimaginable cruelty, and then exploiting the deep concerns about our city. As investigators continued to piece together what really happened that night, a much darker story emerged. According to Valeria Smith's later confession, The actual murder took place in Druid Hill Park, not on a city street as originally claimed. Jacquelyn Smith had been stabbed 5 times in the chest and had defensive wounds on her arms, indicating she had fought for her life. The autopsy confirmed the brutality of the attack. The medical examiner ruled Jacquelyn's death a homicide due to the 5 stab wounds to her chest and an additional stab wound to her right arm. The defensive wound suggested she had desperately tried to protect herself from her attacker, her own husband. What could drive a man to murder his wife and then create such an elaborate deception? As investigators looked deeper into Keith Smith's background, they discovered he was no stranger to criminal activity. Court records revealed that he had served time for 3 robberies at a Timonium bank in the early 2000s. He had been sentenced to 12 years in prison and was released in 2007. As for motive, several possibilities emerged. Jacquelyn's brother revealed that she had a rocky relationship with Valeria, suggesting this tension could have played a role. That could be motive, he said, or maybe it was about money. The arrest warrants provided additional insight into Keith's possible motives. According to his brother's statement to police, Jacquelyn had been talking about divorcing Keith. This suggests that Keith may have killed his wife rather than face the end of their marriage and potential financial consequences. In the days following the murder, Keith Smith appeared to be planning his escape. He attempted to make arrangements to flee to Cuba and was caught on a wiretap asking a travel agent if there was a way to get into Mexico without going through a border checkpoint. These actions clearly demonstrated consciousness of guilt and advanced planning. On March 21, 2019, Keith and Valeria Smith were extradited back to Baltimore to face justice. The Baltimore Police Department's warrant apprehension task force brought them back to Maryland, where they were immediately transported to the Central Booking Intake Facility. In the legal proceedings that followed, Valeria Smith eventually turned on her father. She confessed to being an accomplice and revealed that Jacquelyn had indeed been murdered by Keith Smith. This testimony would prove crucial in securing justice for Jacquelyn. Father and daughter faced different legal outcomes. In December 2021, Keith Smith was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of his wife. Valeria received a lesser sentence for her complicity in the crime, acknowledging her role in the cover-up but placing the actual killing squarely on her father. The sentencing brought some measure of closure to Jacquelyn's family, though nothing could bring back the beloved engineer, daughter, and friend whose life was cut tragically short by those who should have loved her most. The case of Jacquelyn Smith highlighted not only the brutal betrayal by a husband and stepdaughter, but also how the city of Baltimore itself had been used as a prop in their deception. Keith and Valeria had cynically exploited negative stereotypes about the city to cover their crime, knowing that a story about dangerous panhandlers in Baltimore would be readily believed. As Police Commissioner Michael Harrison noted during the press conference announcing their arrests, quote, "What we want to make sure is that the truth comes out and justice is done." He added that people took advantage of Baltimore, recognizing how the negative stereotypes about the city had helped contribute to the believability of the suspect's false report. The case served as a sobering reminder that the most dangerous threats sometimes come not from strangers on the street, but from those closest to us. While the initial story had caused people to fear helping strangers in need, the truth revealed a much more intimate kind of danger. The murder of Jacquelyn Smith stands as one of the most shocking cases of familial betrayal in recent memory. What began as a celebration ended in tragedy, followed by months of deception before the truth finally came to light. From the tearful interviews given by Keith Smith in the days following the murder to the dramatic arrest at the Mexican border, the case reads like a thriller novel. But for Jacquelyn's family and friends, it was all too real, a nightmare they continue to live with every day. Perhaps the most chilling aspect of the case is the irony in Keith Smith's own words to the media. "Be careful who you trust, because things are not always as they seem." Indeed, For Jacquelyn Smith, the danger was not from a stranger on a dark Baltimore street, but from the husband sitting beside her and the stepdaughter in the back seat of their car. As this case so tragically demonstrates, the truth, no matter how well concealed, eventually finds its way to the surface. And for Keith and Valeria Smith, that truth led not to Mexico and freedom, but to a Maryland courtroom, and justice for the woman whose trust they had so fatally betrayed. You'll find another video coming your way soon. Please like and subscribe, stay ready, and be safe out there, people.